I had this degree of anxiety about going because I knew I was going to see something, something I couldn't quite name. And I knew because of my upbringing, because of my mother, because of my father, because of my wife, because of my son, because of my community, that after I saw the thing, I would have to come back and talk about it. That there was no option in which I did not talk about it. And I thought I was going to another country. But in fact, what amazed me was I actually felt that I was in the same country. But I was in a different time. I was in the time of my parents and my grandparents. I can think back to all of the articles I've read, all the things I've seen said about how complicated and how complex the situation is and the occupation is. I say it's complex, it's complicated. And it's made to sound as though you need a degree in Middle Eastern studies or some such, a PhD, to really understand what's happening. But I understood the first day. We went to East Jerusalem to try to visit in the way that Muslims visit Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I can remember being there, and there were 4 IDF guards, biggest guns I'd ever seen in my life. And they checked IDs, and they gave us our IDs back. And then they did nothing. They just made us wait. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. There was no list, there was no protocol, there was no anything. They were just making us wait because they could. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I was like, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. The second day we went to Hebron, and I can remember walking down streets with a Palestinian guide. And we would get to certain streets, and he would say, I can't walk down this street with you. You can walk, I cannot, because I'm Palestinian. And I thought, I know what that is. As we drove through the occupied territories, and I would look out, and I would see roads that Palestinians could use, and roads that only Israeli Jews could use. I said, I know what this is. As I saw different colored license plates for different classes of people, I said, I know what this is. As I saw communities that I can only describe as segregated, I said, this is Chicago, it's Baltimore, it's Philadelphia. And I don't mean to center the whole world on America. We have a tendency to do that, but my lens is my lens. This is all I have. And what I felt was a tremendous weight. I felt the obvious thing that I think all of us feel, that our tax dollars are effectively subsidizing apartheid, or subsidizing a segregationist order, a Jim Crow regime. But I also felt that as an African American who was reared on the fight against Jim Crow, against white supremacy, against apartheid, I felt tremendous shame. How could I not know? How could I not know that the only democracy in the Middle East as it builds itself is segregated? How did I not know that? And what I came to, Michelle, was that Israel is a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East, in the exact same way that America is the oldest democracy in the world. So the relationship was quite clear. It was quite clear, it was palpable, it was felt, and the responsibility was clear after that. Yeah, well, I'll say a couple things. I think it's really important to acknowledge something, and that is that I'm a relative latecomer to this. It's not something that I had a real knowledge of. I had an intuition for it, I had an awareness of the tradition, But it really was not until I went there that I had a tactile feeling for it. One of the things that I will probably be making amends for, until the day they put me in the ground, if I'm honest, is in one of my most celebrated works of journalism, when I had to demonstrate tangibly how a reparations program could be done. I looked to Israel. And I think about that. And one of my golden rules about writing is that, you only write after you've reported, you only write after. And I wrote without going. And so while there is this long tradition of solidarity, for me personally, there's a thing of making amends. And it is terribly, ferociously important to me. I think about that, and I think about how gracious people were when I was over there. I think about how they took me into their homes. I think about how they fed me. And I think about how their only request was, when you go back, don't lose your voice. That was all they asked. And so for me, I am obviously aware of the tradition. But this is personal. You know what I mean? I have some debts to pay. And I think it's really, really important that I be clear about that.
Yes, well.
It has taken years, and I've tried to work this out in my work, to understand nonviolence as an ethic. And I understood it in Israel. King would talk about the corrupting influence of violence, what it did to the soul. And I have to say, and this is really, really important, as much as I saw my world through the eyes of the Palestinians, I saw what I can only describe as an alternative history through the eyes of Israeli Jews. I understood how pain, oppression, genocide, how you can take the wrong lesson from it. And how you can take the lesson that the real problem is that I did not have power, that I did not have the guns. And it was sad. I went to Yad Vashem, and it was a deeply, deeply moving experience. Just incredibly. I can remember coming in, and the first thing I saw was this collection of home movies that had been taken before the Holocaust. And it broke me. And I walked through, and anybody tells you it wasn't as bad as they say it was bad. It was worse. And I was so clear on that. And I got to the end. And I walked outside, and there was a line of young soldiers out there with guns. And I just thought, what would it mean for all of the suffering that I've endured as a black person individually? What would it mean for all of the violence that we've endured ourselves, for all the babies that were bombed in churches, for the fact that we as a people are the products of rape and sexual assault, that it marks every one of us, down to our genes? What would it mean to have suffered some 250 years of enslavement, a period longer than our time of freedom? And to derive from that what we really need is power. And what we do with that power really doesn't matter as long as we safeguard ourselves. I was watching the news yesterday, and I saw, in fact, my congressman actually. And journalists asked him, he said, how do you measure the amount of death, the body count? At what point is it enough? At what point do you say, you know what, this is actually too much, this is actually tipping into something? And my man couldn't give a number. He couldn't say when it was too much. And some people will watch that and get angry, and I understand that. And I watched it and got really sad because I understood it. And I understood in me how the rage, the anger, the deep felt pain of your own oppression, how you can take the wrong lesson from it. And that's really what King was trying to ward. Then I got him. You understand what I'm saying? Then I got, he would always talk about nonviolence for your soul. You know what I mean? And then I got it. I really, really understood. So, as much as the lessons were really, really clear that I got, and as much as I, thank, my Palestinian host, I have to tell you, the opportunity to observe Israeli society was like it was a peek into a way not taken, maybe because that wasn't an option. Thank God it wasn't an option. But there was a deep, deep sense of sadness. It was the most unsafe place I've ever felt in my life. And I don't mean in the occupied territories. I mean in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv. I felt power. I felt people with power. But I didn't feel a safety. I just want to say thank you once again. I saw more of Israel and Palestine, occupied territories, than I have seen of any country ever. I saw Tel Aviv, I saw Haifa, I saw Jaffa, I saw Bezet, I saw Ramallah, I saw Susia. I saw so much, and I had tutors all the way through. When I'm sitting right here, I went to Sheikh Jarrah, and Muhammad tutored me. I am back here. I got to spend some time with Nora, and Nora is tutoring me. I started your book. It's incredible. And so I just, I think I feel privileged to have the opportunity to see in somebody else's struggle, not just my own, but as you were saying, to have my consciousness heightened, to understand more about myself through other people. And my only way to say thank you, my only way to pay that back is, as I said, to keep the promise that I made when I was over there, and that is to use my voice. I'm much more comfortable using my pen, but in the midst of bombs being dropped on children, we have to speak. We have to speak.